Hello, welcome to today's broadcast. I'm wondering if this will work on Twitter, but it says online that I'm broadcasting live to YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So we'll see if I can see any comments. Thank you for tuning in. I want to talk about the State of the Union address, President Biden's President Biden's under-acknowledged contribution to the American economy and to American stability and consequently to global stability. President Biden has been leading the West in a coalescence of unity around the idea of democracy and principle, even in the context, or especially I should say in the context of Vladimir Putin's attacks on a rule-based system or any kind of respect for sovereignty of different nations. So the nice thing is that only 12 people showed up to a trucker rally that was created to compete with President Biden's address today. So it was slated to have 3,000 attendees who were going to be protesting the tyranny of mask mandates and vaccine mandates. In other words, public health measures deployed by state officials at various times and places in an effort to contain the harm caused by a global pandemic, namely COVID-19. Now, hooray for what our children have learned from adults and children pulling together during a difficult time to try and help minimize the risk for individuals, for communities, for vulnerable people. So some people wore masks in an effort to protect their communities until the vaccines could be invented, and even then, vaccine uptake didn't reach high enough levels within the United States for herd immunity to be sufficiently protective. So mask wearing has continued, and yes, mask wearing is likely to discontinue in the near future in a lot of places, and that's already been visible. But imagine trying to contrast that oppression of being asked to wear a face covering with the oppression currently being endured by the people of Ukraine, who have suffered an incursion, an ongoing and escalating attack from Russian forces, even though my dad's calling. Hi, Dad. Ow, ow. Hi, Dad. I'm doing a broadcast, but I just stopped to say hello to you. But I'll talk to you soon. Is everything okay?
Can you do a very quickie and tell me what is the recipe for chicken drumsticks?
Oh, garam masala, garlic powder, salt, a little bit of cayenne pepper and paprika.
And do you also put on the yogurt?
No. Oh, and I mix it with olive oil and then roll the chicken legs in that mixture. So they've got a coating of the olive oil and the spices, and then in the oven. Yeah.
All right. The garam masala and paprika and
yes. Garlic powder. Yes, and salt. And then more cayenne. You can put a little bit of cayenne pepper on the ones for the children, but you can increase the concentration of cayenne pepper in the salt mix for the adults if you want to be spicier for adults. But otherwise, yeah.
Okay. Have a nice broadcast.
Thanks, darling. Thanks, Dad.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so that was just an incidental inclusion of a recipe of mine for chicken legs that my daughter likes. Olive oil, put a spoonful of garam masala. Do you know that spice mix? It's a mixture of pepper and cumin and cardamom and things, I think. Anyway, my daughter likes it. But we're talking about State of the Union, and we're very focused because it is critical to participate as informed citizens to counter the influence of the media that is often too quick to embrace some kind of false equivalence by picking fault or finding fault with the Biden-Harris administration to balance out all the negative things that they had to say about. Hello. I'm on a live broadcast, yes. But you put your underpants away. That's good. Oh, you're getting hot. Are you going for a walk? What are you doing? All right, so I was saying false equivalency by balancing out some of the reporting on very confirmed corrupt activity, such as, say, taking top secret classified documents to Mar-a-Lago. Darling, you didn't close the door. Top secret documents to Mar-a-Lago. What's some other corrupt things Trump did in office? Oh, I know. Try and blackmail the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, by corruptly withholding approximately $400 million of military aid that had already been approved of by the legislative branch of Congress, the legislative branch of government, namely Congress. Congress had the right, it has the purse of the government, it had the right to approve aid for Ukraine and did so. Trump withheld that aid and delayed it and sent Rudy Giuliani and William Barr to Ukraine to try and convince Zelensky's various aides and spokespeople that it would be necessary to announce an investigation into Joe Biden's son. Joe Biden was not yet the president. Joe Biden was not yet the Democratic nominee, but he was clearly going to be a threat to Trump's second-term prospects because he was the best qualified, highest profile Democratic candidate. He'd been vice president for 8 years, and that was a level of recognizability that rivaled Trump's strong presence in the public imagination as a person on television for years and years and years in The Apprentice. So if people were just voting for a white person they were familiar with, there was Donald Trump, and then a viable alternative was Joe Biden. So what was the condition under which Trump was going to remove his illegal blockage of this aid, $400 million worth of military aid, targeted and intended by Congress to help Ukraine build up its military defenses against Russia that's been invading them on and off for, is it 12 years? A long time. There's been 2008, so let's see. When was Crimea? 2014? When was Georgia invaded? Anyway, there's been a lot of invasions. There's been a lot of evidence that's often ignored that Vladimir Putin had these megalomaniacal dreams of restoring the USSR. Hi, darling. He looks a bit under the weather, darling. Restoring the USSR to its former glory, that is, as an ostracized, kleptocratic empire with significant financial problems. So Trump tried to blackmail Zelensky. He did nearly succeed in that Vladimir Zelensky was booked into Fareed Zakar's CNN show. What's it called? You can find out. Fareed. Oh, what I should say, Fareed Zakaria. There we go. He's an Indian-American journalist, host of CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS. Okay. Educated at Harvard, and writes a weekly column for something. All right, so Zelensky was actually had agreed to go on that show, and under Trump's terms, what Zelensky had to say was, yes, we are going to begin an investigation into Hunter Biden. And that would have been enough for American media to confect an ongoing series of speculations and suppositions to tarnish the reputation of Joe Biden. Because as we saw with Hillary Clinton's emails, there wasn't anything wrong there, but there was enough ability in the media to continue to speculate and for James Comey to say, oh, well, people are going to speculate, so I have to make sure that everybody's very confident, so I have to announce a reopening of the investigation, because he was so apparent, according to himself, so convinced that Hillary Clinton would win the election, because he had so much faith in his fellow Republicans not to vote for an obvious con artist, financially compromised, money laundering, crass person, such as Donald Trump, that he just thought, I have to make her tenure as president without blemish. So she must have another investigation opened, contravening FBI policy to not announce investigations or do things too obviously endangering to a candidate's electoral prospects just before the election. So when did James Comey make that announcement? October, November, so the month before the sodding election. So thanks, James Comey, for playing your part, for succumbing to pressure from the whatever elements in the FBI were complicit with Rudy Giuliani in essentially extorting James Comey by threatening to tarnish the reputation of the FBI, which he apparently prioritized above all things. The public must have faith in the FBI. I'll tell you what wasn't great for the reputation of the FBI: having a lying con artist in power who was made more whose electability prospects were massively increased by James Comey's announcement in October. We're reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails because, if we keep investigating longer, maybe we will find something. We will find something untoward. Maybe we will find something criminal if we just keep investigating. And, I just did that to help Hillary Clinton clear her name. Yeah, right, you did it because people were saying, we will leak that there's more Hillary Clinton emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop and this hasn't been investigated properly, and will claim that the FBI is corrupt and in Hillary Clinton's pocket. And in order to just avoid that scenario of accusations being made of the FBI's integrity, James Comey sacrificed the United States, democracy in the United States. He broke FBI policy and jeopardized the prospects of one candidate. That's the whole reason why they have a policy to not announce investigations. Of course, we know what investigation wasn't announced. It was the investigation to Trump for his evident connections to Russia. That was Operation Crossfire Hurricane, wasn't it? And they didn't tell the public about that, but they did. James Comey did announce a reopening of an investigation into Hillary Clinton, thereby diminishing people's ability to vote for Hillary Clinton in good faith. These things are contributory factors, and whether consciously or not, his antagonism and misogyny towards Hillary Clinton and his over-prioritization of the reputation of the FBI against the actual standards of the FBI, which said, don't mess with a candidate's electability, don't announce an investigation into a candidate just before the election. So, yep, thanks, James Comey. Zelensky was lucky to have escaped being coerced into participating into a Trump sabotage scheme of Joe Biden's electoral prospects, which would have occurred if Fareed Zakaria's show on CNN had been the scene of an announcement that there was going to be an investigation into Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. That it would have been the spring point for a whole host of speculation. Is it true? No smoke without fire. Blah, blah, blah. Is Joe Biden corrupt? It would have played into all the Republican false talking points that claimed when Joe Biden helped Ukraine lean into its anti-corruption efforts by firing a corrupt prosecutor called Viktor Shokin, who was holding up corruption prosecutions. And Joe Biden helped motivate them by saying, we're going to give you this aid when that prosecutor, who's renowned for being corrupt and failing to investigate corruption, thereby facilitating corruption, is removed. he spearheaded an international effort and was supported in that effort by Angela Merkel and the and other international figures, because it was something widely acknowledged. Joe Biden wasn't privately trying to blackmail the then president of Ukraine for personal gain in a political contest. Joe Biden was trying to help Ukraine, and he was revered in Ukraine for that. So it must have been really hard for Zelensky to be put in such a morally compromising position by Donald Trump, saying basically, I'm withholding this aid. If you want these, hi Christopher, if you want this financing for your military, you're going to have to put yourself at the spear tip of an effort to sabotage Joe Biden. And in the transcript of Trump's conversation with Zelensky, there's that mobster language of, oh, can you do us a favor though? And I've heard these things need to be investigated. And this manipulative, without a minimal saying of it directly, but this crushing implication of, yes, you're curious as to why we haven't been forthcoming with the promised aid. Well, we just, one thing from you and that can all go away. That obstruction to that aid can all go away. So I'm really sorry for the people of Ukraine, and I'm sorry because it's a war crime. It's just inhumane the way that civilian residential areas have been targeted by Russian cluster bombs, which are illegal in a lot of countries, have been used to decimate people's living spaces and to take the lives of men, women, and children. And yes, Russians have been very cloistered from the truth. So people are making an effort to go online, find a Russian restaurant, and leave a review. Use Google Translate to come up with a comment in Russian that says, your country is invading Ukraine and killing civilians, and Putin is hiding this from you. And many Russian soldiers are deserting, surrendering, and just to let them know, because Russian media is very tightly controlled. You can imagine, because it's what it would be like if Fox News was even more dominant than it is now. You can see already the effect that Fox News has on a lot of the American population. People who watch Fox News won't get vaccinated, are being manipulated to be foot soldiers, in a war against truth, in a war against public health. They're being coerced into playing Russian roulette with their own health and the health of their families and the futures of their children, who may potentially be orphaned if one or more of their parents loses their lives to COVID, a disease that is easily vaccine preventable in a sense of progression to serious disease. Because if you have 2 vaccine shots and you have a booster shot, then your chances of surviving COVID are very, very high. Whereas if you're unboosted, or if more than that, you're not only unboosted, but you don't have your first or second vaccination shot, you're more vulnerable to that potential of being hospitalized, being left with lung scarring, being left with the aftermath of a severe case of COVID, which can be debilitating and even deadly for many people. So we've seen statistics from researchers in the field that in areas where Trump had a high percentage of the 2020 vote, deaths have been occurring at a far higher rate. And the people who die aren't necessarily all Trump supporters, but it's just that they're able to spread the disease better in areas where there's low vaccination rates. So it might even be a Biden supporter who lives in relative poverty without access to healthcare, who's developed diabetes or who has comorbid conditions, who has obesity, and they'll be the victim of the low rates of vaccination in their community, which is something that's been encouraged and it's been promoted by Laura Ingraham, by Tucker Carlson, by Sean Hannity. And that's why, even in my own imperfect way, I like to speak out when I can, because it takes the condemnation of ordinary people. It takes people noticing that it's intolerable, that decency is incongruous with silence on these topics, that standing back and allowing Republicans to get away with cheerleading cheerleading for Putin in a moment of geopolitical crisis, or undermining the current president of the United States in a moment of geopolitical crisis that wasn't caused by Biden. Trump's pandering to Putin, Trump's blocking of aid to Ukraine, Trump's abolishing the, what's it called? There was a nuclear treaty called something skies. Hang on, I'll look it up. Trump got rid of skies treaty. Trump to withdraw the United States from the Open Skies Treaty. He did that in, well, that was being reported on in the 21st of May, 2020. Yep. And he claimed to be doing it because of Russian violations. Withdrawing from a treaty with Russia because Russia didn't adhere to the treaty was a permission slip to Putin to violate that treaty some more and to weaken the US's potential response to future violations of those standards. Trump also was arguing for withdrawing US troops from NATO positions in Germany. Trump did a lot to make it easier for Putin to invade Ukraine and to cause the carnage that we're currently seeing on our screens every night and all day. So the Treaty on Open Skies establishes a program of unarmed aerial surveillance flights over the entire territory of its participants. The treaty is designed to enhance mutual understanding and confidence by giving all participants, regardless of size, a direct role in gathering information about military forces and activities of concern to them. It had 34 party states. Well, 33 after Trump withdrew the United States in May 2020. Yuck. Yuck that Tucker Carlson, oh, we can share clips. Can I share clips right now? Maybe no. Settings. Nope. No. Well, anyway, hi Christopher, thanks for turning up. How are you? I know it's not, I haven't been broadcasting very regularly. Would you believe that I'm in Australia right now? I guess you can see that it's light. My husband planned a trip for us so we could see family members and the kids could see their grandparents and their cousins, which is nice. It's a little bit difficult for me sometimes because I'm with Greta Thunberg in that I think air travel is a significant contributing factor to climate change. And I'm aware that climate change is affecting significant parts of the globe now and will continue to escalate and intensify over the next few years. And it's happening faster and more aggressively than many people realized. But one significant factor in climate change is that people don't talk about it. So at least I am talking about it, even though, yes, my actions in coming on a holiday to my homeland are contributing to the levels of heat trapping gases in the atmosphere, which makes it likely that we are continuing to see that we will continue to see a dramatic escalation of flooding, fires, drought, and intolerable heat waves that cause the death of people who work in outdoor occupations and people who are relatively impoverished and can't afford the levels of air conditioning that you need to maintain homeostasis in times of severe heat conditions. Christopher says, yay, Australia. That's good. Australia is experiencing some severe flooding. Not that far from me, but I'm not in a flooded area at present. And there's been a lot of rescuing. One of our ministers started a GoFundMe, and that attracted a lot of derision, a GoFundMe account for people negatively affected by flooding, because he is a main player in this political party that's sitting on a $4.2 billion natural disaster fund that hasn't been spent, hasn't been dipped into at all, even though Australia's experienced significant natural disasters over the last few years. Part of the pattern of increasingly frequent and severe natural disasters, which are becoming increasingly unnatural because anthropogenic climate destabilization is contributing to these conditions and making these things happen at a more frequent and more intense rate. So yes, they're sitting on all this money, which is earning interest, and not expending it on the public, which needs aid, and instead starting a GoFundMe, which plays into these very American ideas of government doesn't work, you can't rely on government, you just have to rely on religion for charity, or GoFundMe accounts. And I tell you what, delivering medical help to people through GoFundMes instead of having a strong, relatively universal coverage system, or like most developed nations have a mix of private health care and some type of access to a Medicare equivalent for everybody else. So Christopher is able to comment through YouTube. That's awesome. I think for some reason the Twitter function doesn't allow people to comment, but I've sometimes seen people comment through Twitch as well. So I'm going to wind this broadcast up just to say thank you to President Biden again. And yes, there's an ongoing war in Ukraine. Inflation is going up around the world, so that's important to register because it's a big Republican talking point to say, inflation. Well, some people have money saved up from not having gone out that much for the past 2 years. And that contributes to inflationary pressures because companies are raising prices because the market's showing a capacity to take it. So they raise their prices, people's consumption levels aren't dropping, so the market is absorbing the price increases. And that's because the bulk of people in America aren't impoverished, but the subset of people that are in financial difficulties, they were getting money for a while. They were getting the child tax credit payments, I think approximately $300 a month per child, and that was helping people continue to consume the life items that they required to just help them exist, food items and transport and the personal expenditures that they just need on a day-to-day basis to keep their lives rolling along smoothly. And Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema withheld their support from the Build Back Better bill, which legislated a continuation of those payments to people in America with children. So they have sabotaged the ability of that relatively impoverished underclass in America to cope with inflation. Inflation being a global problem with various contributing factors, not only the problems with supply chains that have arisen because of COVID, but also the fact that people were able to gather, people who were still earning money were able to gather disposable income, and build it up, and thus the market could absorb a degree of price increases without dropping consumption levels. I'm sure that's a contributing factor. I don't see it get talked about much. But anyway, Joe Biden wants America to do better, and he acknowledges the strength of America in its people. So yay for multi-plural democracy. And when we take the time to celebrate what is strong about America, we increase our ability to call people in, to support multi-plural democracy, and to reject the type of fascism espoused by someone like Vladimir Putin, who yearns for a more homogenous, not multi-plural, but a white, pure Christian, agrarian society that doesn't have as much trade or interplay with other nations. I need a glass of water, but oh well. Yes. Look, so I will go drink some water and say thank you. Oh, Christopher says, I will pass the word to all I know here in the US and in the UK to donate to Australia ASAP. We don't need the world to donate to Australia ASAP. We need our government to stop hoarding its budgeted fund for natural disaster relief. I don't have COVID, or at least I don't have COVID that's detectable by a rapid antigen test because I've already taken one of those. This appears to just be a cold with a little bit of an attendant cough. But yes, thank you for caring about Australia, Christopher. Uh, I think some good places to donate to at the moment are probably Afghanistan, which is suffering significant hunger, and Ukraine, which is the victim of ongoing war crimes that are going to get worse because Putin doesn't care about civilian lives. Putin is a similar type of sociopath to Trump, but his ambitions are more expansionist. So Trump's ambitions tend to be increase wealth, personal power, and hang on to power in order to stay 2 steps ahead of legal consequences for being a pathetic criminal who doesn't know how to succeed but knows how to create the appearance of success through crimes such as money laundering, and then use his marketing skills to translate the appearance of success and the gold toilets and the trophy wife and the whatnot, the succession of trophy wives, into something that becomes attractive to investors so that people invest money into his business or that people donate money to his various grift pursuits. His Trump Foundation, which has been, I think, disbanded by the New York Attorney General because of financial crimes, but also people who love him and who fall for his promises that he understands the pathway to wealth and success. They can just donate money to him by buying merchandise. Trump has a very successful grift with millions of Americans who've fallen for the idea that he is the champion of white-centric favoritism, that they will occupy their rightful status as heritage Americans if Trump regains office, if Trump gets to exert a strong influence over America's future, than advocates for multi-plural democracy, advocates for racial equality, advocates for inclusion and acceptance like Joe Biden, i.e. Black allies. There are people who valorize Trump and will ignore all evidence of his criminality, obsequiousness to Putin, continual backing of the wrong ship. What did he call Putin? He said Putin was very savvy and a genius, and that he was acquiring all of Ukraine for $2 worth of sanctions. So Putin's taken significant steps that have resulted in consequences that are collapsing the Russian economy. The Russian stock market has closed and didn't reopen on Monday as it was due to, didn't reopen on Tuesday, is unlikely to reopen in the near future because Russia wants to continue to hide evidence of the collapse of value of their country, of their companies, of their currency, as much as they can, in order to hide from the public, in order to reduce resistance to the inhumanity of launching a war on Russia's close friends and neighbors. The level of intermeshed relationships, people who've studied in each other's countries, share relatives, can speak each other's language, they're very enmeshed. That doesn't mean Putin should be allowed to overrule the sovereignty of Ukraine and say, we're just going to absorb this into the greater glory of a restored Soviet Union plan. It should create respect and an increased reluctance to take up arms and to fire on civilians who are so close to Ukrainians. But strongman poses toxic Toxic masculinity leaders like Putin have no respect for human life. And with Trump, his lack of respect for human life could be seen in his reluctance to create a COVID plan at a federal level for America. He didn't have a testing plan. He refused to use the Domestic Production Act of 1952 to compel companies to enter into contracts with the United States government to mass produce tests or masks or gowns or any of the things America needed to contain COVID-19 as a disease initially. But anyway, Christopher asks what a hot toddy is. Oh, a hot toddy. I think that's a type of drink. I need one, yes. I will thank you for that prompt, and I will go get one. Take care, all the best. Talk to you soon, and let's see if we can block. There's a couple of trolls. Not many, but just there we go. All right. I'm so glad you were here. Christopher, take care, and talk to you again soon. Bye.